Hi, it's Oliver, and I'd like to do a little tour of Pixera Control with you. So, this is a new show that we've just created and just has one screen, one timeline, and one layer and one container. So, this is what Control looks like when you actually open the project and there's nothing actually going on. To the left, we have our library and we have our drivers, third-party products, protocols, ArtNet, DMX, TCP, UDP, and all that kind of stuff. Tools are giving us generators, math, text nodes, and all that stuff, and other small helpers. And usually, I just drag out of the library, I drag a new module into our workspace. This is our workspace, and you see once you highlight that new module, you will see on the right side the inspector pop up. You can give it a new name, and that's basically what you can do here. In the workspace, there are a couple of things to interact with the workspace. We can inject a timeline, so we can actually see a timeline in the control tab. We have our log window here, so whenever something, it's like we have some mistake in our code or something like that, it will show up in the log. And regular things like here's plus and minus. This applies as well for the scroll wheel, so you have the scroll wheel behavior that you're familiar with from Pixera. If you're scrolling, always scrolling to point to the place where you point to. Alt left mouse click lets you drag around the work surface here. And this should be familiar. This is going to reset a view, and this is going to back to and shows us all the nodes that we have. Okay, inside our workspace, we are going to work with a new module, and we have a tab over here that says UI for user interface. And yes, we want to create a user interface, so please add one. Okay. So, what do we want to do? Usually just want to create buttons and faders. A couple of other things here. That's going to be topic of later videos. But we're going to start it up with a button and a vertical fader. So, there's nothing inside of our new module, so usually what we, when we start up, first thing we would like to do is actually trigger our own Pixera instance. So we come up here, and this way I choose which module this button is supposed to trigger. This user interface can trigger every module that you have inside of your workspace, or this fader can send data to every module that's around in your workspace. So you're not limited to this module. So we would like to trigger Pixera. Now, if we click up here, we will see that Pixera module. If we click on Pixera, we are going to get all the API calls that we can remote control. If you see that you're it's like come back here, and this is the window. Actually, window is just too small, so we can you click in here, left mouse click, and you just drag it around your window. So first thing you might want to do is, yes, I always want to remote control the timeline and just have one timeline, and in this timeline I want to set a pause, play, or stop, or store that. I usually go for play. Okay, so we have that. So we could create buttons here with pause, play, all that things. Probably want to name that. Oops. Come here. Play. Okay. So once I've changed something, and that's really important, you have to store your user interface. Doesn't help when you store the whole session, because that won't store what you actually have just done here. So you always have to store something before you do something else, or before you move out of the way to move along to another tab. Okay, for that fader, same thing. I'd like to remote control my timeline 1, and maybe I don't like that because I can't read everything, so I'm just gonna grab that and I'm just gonna move it so that I can see everything. I want to set the opacity. Now we're going to leave value empty because we want that fader to actually set the value. So leave that empty, and the value is being generated by the fader and being passed on by that item here. I'm going to store that. Okay. Once I've done that, there are a couple of things I can check, because right here I have my my inspector for that fader. I can see my the thing that the API call that it's actually going to do, position, sizing, style classes. We'll do that later, but we can insert CSS right here. ID. Here's the important thing: range. So timeline is going to be from 0 to 1. That's going to be our value range. So maximum is going to be 1. I'm going to set that to 0. Okay. Here, for the timeline integer, you can choose like, okay, does this fader should that do integers or floating point with decimals? Obviously, if I'm going from 0 to 1, I want to have the floating point and decimals. Later on, if I want to send ArtNet or DMX data, I want to just have integer values. So just can tick that box. Everything else, we'll use that for later. Okay. Once more, store that here. And now I want to go into so-called run mode. So I push that pencil here. That's going to take me to none of the edit. It's going to add all the edit functionality, and I'm going to let's get rid of the lock. I want to bring back my timeline and resize that just a little, and yes, play. Okay. I want to bring that up in the browser because later on I can create my user interfaces that will run in a browser. It's best if you use a Chromium browser, but I had pretty good experience with Firefox as well. Once you are in the browser, see you can see both of all the things here, and you can actually go on and continue to edit all the things that you've done here. So you can go and program in the browser as well. Okay. So up here we come back to our compositing, and we're not seeing anything here, and we're going back to our fader. And that is because we brought the timeline opacity, we brought it back to 0. Now we can drag again and just take out our slider and our fader. You probably have noticed that there's actually no way to create a button stack inside of button. It just has one command that it executes. Same with the fader, only one value. It sends one destination. So we would like to have multiple, like command stacks that we can create. For that, I'm going to do a right click on my new module, and lots of things here. But I'm just going to add to the whole thing, like add an action, and call it button stack, and now I'm going to jump into that action. And we have two ways of interacting or getting programming into the button stack or into that action. This first one is with kind of block programming, and it's the same way that we have seen previously in the button. I need to point the action into a direction, into a module that I want to remote control. Once more, that's going to be Pixera, and same thing. I want to set my timeline 1, give it a play. And then let's say, come on, timeline 1, and then I want the cues. Give me all the cues that we have, and then apply Q2, just meaning, okay, jump to Q2. Okay. Oh, here we need to, like, okay, apply. That's the command that we want to have. So I created a button stack. You know, that could go on forever. That could, you know, it's like go to screens and hide a screen, or make a screen projectable or not projectable, make it visible, make it not visible. Everything that's inside that command structure can be programmed. So we save that. If I trigger this here, I'm going into the Lua programming. So I'm really getting the Lua code that has been created for me, or that I have created. Going back to our block programming, if I do a right click, I could, you know, do lots of more things. Add a condition, place block on a condition, add for loop, add a log entry. So I just know that I have a certain variable or a certain value that I can use, like see in my log. Add sleep. It's in milliseconds for your follow cues that you can insert here. So I'm just gonna wait a second and then do other things after that. Okay. Oh, and we could actually move that up. So afterwards we want to, you know, just like hit Q1, and that should trigger, and then it should jump to Q number 2. Just as an idea. We'll prepare that for later. Okay, so how do we actually trigger this action? Same thing. Come in here, take our button. It's currently being targeted against our module Pixera. We'll point it onto our new module, and now we have button stack. Yep, and we tell you button, you trigger new module, the action button stack. We save that, run, and it just executes whatever has been programmed. So we can go into Q1 and it plays and goes to Q number 2. Good. So we're gonna do the same thing, kind of thing for fader. Fader demo. There's a specialty here, and we give it a bracket and we give it a value. And as you've seen before, we had the value where the actual values were passed into. We tell this action to actually create that feature for us. So same thing, go into our fader and we point it against, oh, didn't take that yet. Come here. Okay, we go new module, here's our fader demo. And here is our value. We could have given it, you know, some other name, but that's the way we pass a value into the action. We define it with right inside the bracket, or we give a name inside the bracket. That name will show up here, and that's the variable and the name of the variable that we pass it on. So once more, we're going to leave that empty because our fader is going to define the actual values. And now still we could do the same thing, and we could let's say we want to have a value of maximum value of 100. Right now I want to have integers only, and I'm going to store that, and now I'm going to pass on those values. Okay, good. I could even, you know, it's like, okay, take a second new module and create another action and call that receiving value, and I'm going to connect that. And now my fader should actually, that fader value, yeah, it's going to be passed into fader demo, and then it can, you know, it's like directed onto a UDP output, TCP output, whatever. I just reroute that. You could multiply that value to multiple actions or values or modules. Do lots of things with that. Okay. Last thing for that video is this button stack that I want to trigger, not by a button, but by a Pixera queue. So there are actually two ways to do that. We go into our Pixera module, go into the timelines, get timelines, timeline 1, get, no, I want to have, get my queues, and I want to have Q1. And what this does when it turns the orange, it creates like a, you know, it just grabs that asset and pulls it out here. Oh, obviously you can, you know, shift it around as well. So now I could go and take the apply of that queue, meaning once this queue is executed or applied, please trigger button stack. So for us, remember, that's timeline 1 to play, well, which is obviously is anyway, and then it just holds for a couple for 2 seconds, and then it lets it jump to queue number 2. Okay, so let's do that. We're going to run into the queue. It kind of overrules the pause state by a play. It waits, so it just, you know, runs on, and then it jumps to Q2. So once more, off it goes. Beautiful. So we've done that. I'm not a huge fan of, you know, like dragging out multiple queues and doing all this. So there's another way to actually do that. So that's, oh, one thing you might need to check out is, yeah, Alt and, you know, drag kind of removes things and connections. Okay, there are a couple of modules that help you in kind of situations like that, and here we have queue applied action. So, and we want to have, oh yeah, we want to have timeline 1. Oh, yep, I need to put it into brackets. Sorry, timeline 1. Apostrophes, not brackets. Sorry. Okay. Now I go and refresh, and now it's giving me all the queues. And it's like Q1 applied, Q2 applied, and so on. Add another queue, Q4. Press refresh, and it just shows up in the right order, and so on and so on. One thing you need to be aware of is don't give you, if you want to use that, don't give you queues numbers, because we need to, that's one thing we need to figure out for that kind of action, or how we actually extrude and extract queues. There's a problem with just digits for queues or names that just have digits and queues, but we'll find that out. So, and here's the same thing. I just take my Q1 apply, put it onto my button stack, and obviously same thing is going to happen. Yep. Thank you for watching this video. It's just the beginning of a series and row of videos, because there's so much to do and so much to know about Pixera Control, from the styling of the user interface to all the input-output connections, to all the drivers and protocol nodes and stuff like you can do with that. So expect more videos coming along, and as always, more functionality is going to be added. So let us know what you think and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you so much and cheers. Bye.